had a really great discussion. One of the first factors that we thought really needed to be addressed is the equity in the programming and in the schools. If there is reconfiguration, if we do consolidate, we need to make sure that the equity continues. There's been a history of trying to keep that, and we need to make sure that goes forward. There was another factor was efficiency in returning to one program, or returning everyone to a single program, but also returning to programming, putting two programs in each of the schools. That there would be busing efficiencies. We're looking at the map of the choice that students make, and to address that as one of the factors. A big one, especially that often comes up with currents because there's decline now, but will there be an increase in enrollments in the future, is that there needs to be flexibility in the buildings, flexibility in the spaces, and flexibility in the programming. What we choose now needs to be able to continue beyond the 10 years if there are other changes that happen. We also talked about other uses for buildings. Community spaces, senior spaces, could that take up entire buildings that we put offline? But also could that fill some of the empty space? So if we have declining enrollments, can we take a few rooms and use them maybe as senior space and have seniors read to children, programs like that brings the community back into the schools? What would happen to public spaces like voting spaces? And storage spaces in all the schools is lacking. Make sure that that's factored in. Look at deed restrictions that are on the current school properties. If we're taking them offline, make sure that there can be another use for them. And there was also some question about the capacity numbers at Strong School, and a suggestion that maybe it should be evaluated more like a high school, that not the rooms won't be filled all the time because of special programming.
Thank you, Ellie. Anybody who sat in on the currents breakout session, any additional items to add or anything that maybe you'd like to highlight? Sounds like you did a great job, Ellie. Paul, do you want to talk about contents?
Sure. Some of these items that we came up with are same as the ones that you had. One about community use of space in schools, especially gyms, and possibly some of the other spaces. So the community center, and it was estimated that about 5,000 square feet would be necessary for a community center, and that could be a possible use of space as it gets opened up in the schools. We also talked about a very important topic, which is the hot school program, and that has to be evaluated in terms of how well it functions in some of these options that we're talking about, especially where we have an ID program into elementary schools. And if I understand it correctly, I'm going to look into this more detail. It's pretty unlikely that two schools in the same town would get accepted into the HOT program, and so that would mean that even though the schools are physically the same, they wouldn't have the same opportunities. So we need to find out a little bit more about that as we go forward. It could be help us decide what works and what doesn't work. Also, we talked about class size. A class size is smaller and leads to better educational results. And so we may not want to have as one of our goals the fact that we're filling up all the classrooms with a higher number of students than necessary, because a lower class size would help education. There was a bus study that I want to get a copy of so I can catch up with that, that looked at the extra cost of busing by running the two programs parallel in the district, and the differential between the two is, first of all, it's not a high number, and secondly, it's worth it. So I want to find out about that. And it might be better to have as it is now, an ID program in one elementary school and a contemporary program in the other school, rather than have a path program in each school. So we need to look at that as we explore these options. Is that it? Anything else? Multi-age classrooms. In the ID program, they have multi-age classrooms, and some of our options work out better because they can have K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a K to 5 works out better for multi-age classrooms than a K to 4. Okay.
Thanks, Paul. I'll wrap up for the breakout session that focused on the buildings, the containers, if you will. And both Ally and Paul touched on several items that I think people that sat in our breakout session might have heard. Ideas like how do we best maintain flexibility? What would happen relative to the programs? Are we better served to have the ID and contemporary in two distinct schools, or as what was proposed in some of the options, bring them together? And we heard a strong suggestion that what exists today has some really great attributes, and some counter argument to that in terms of, well, there's a possibility of other approaches. But it was pointed out that one of the key concerns would be, whatever's decided, is there flexibility enough in the proposal to allow us to revert if need be? And that point of flexibility I heard from both of the other breakout sessions. One of the areas that we focused on was a question of, as we consider the considerations that we compare these various options with, we had some really good suggestions from my group, and I'd like to share some of them. One consideration would be flexibility, what I just touched on. If a decision is made, how does it position the district for the future? How well can we respond to change? How well can we respond to future challenge? Others that we had, human resources. Do any of the options provide us the opportunity to do a better job of sharing human resources within the district? So that's something that we can put under project results. Energy efficiency. Do any of the options provide us the opportunity to do better from an energy efficiency standpoint? Transportation. It was touched on in one of the other groups, but do any of the options offer us the opportunity to improve our situation relative to district transportation costs? So that's a highlight of some of them. Recognizing the time, I'll try to close it there. I'd ask anybody who sat in containers, any other items that I may have missed that you want to highlight? Okay, seeing none, I'll turn it over to Karen. Thank you all for helping us this evening, and we enjoyed it.
Yes, I want to thank you all for coming today, too. I listened in on most of the sessions. I missed the container session, sorry, Jim. But we had some very healthy conversations and some great suggestions about options. And I do want to make it clear that these are all options. We had some great suggestions to consider some different options. I think one specifically was to design the options showing integrated day in one building, contemporary in the other, going forward. So the next step is to really identify or modify what we have here to include your suggestions this evening, and then to look at each option and evaluate all of the considerations relative to that option and figure out how to display it in a way that we can all absorb that. So our next session is going to be very interesting because we'll be seeing these options plus the new options that you suggested today, and we'll be talking about what are the implications of each one of those options, and hopefully you'll have some implications too. So the next session should be very interesting. I think DRA has a lot of work to do, so we'll be very happy to have the next session and see what this all leads to. But thank you all for coming once again, and I hope that you will come back and continue talking to us about this conversation. It's really important to all of us, so thank you very much.